Okay, well, I'll get started and I'll introduce Marla, um, which is a pleasure for me to do. Marla just finished her 5th year at RIT. She's from Penfield and started her college career at MCC, where she played for 2 years and was an all-region player at MCC before moving on to RIT. I think it's like a 3+2 program. Is that correct, Marla, for engineering? So she started her first 2 years of engineering there and then moved on for her final three at RIT. So she played for RIT women's soccer for 2 seasons and just really kind of had a ton of success in those 2 years. She was a first team all conference player, an all region player, and most notably a first team Google Cloud academic All-American.
Wow.
So after finishing her 4 years of playing, she still had one more year at RIT. So she ended up volunteering as an assistant coach for us again, and also in Empire for the U8 girls. So you might have seen her around the facility a little bit. She graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering and had job offers all over the country and finally accepted one, luckily for us, at L3 Harris. So she'll be starting in a few weeks and will still be around Rochester to hopefully stay involved with both RIT women's soccer and with Empire. So welcome, Marla.
Thanks.
Great job. Thanks, Marla. Congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you.
Jess, you want to introduce Miss Emily to us?
Yeah. So I'm going to let Emily take over after I tell you guys a little bit about her, but I've got Emily Wolick on here. She's going into her junior year at Division I college, University of Evansville, and that is located in Indiana. That is part of the Missouri Valley Conference. She received MVC all freshman team her first year at the University of Evansville. She also received MVC preseason all conference honors and 2-time MVC second team all conference honors as well. And that is just going into her junior year. So she has yet to graduate like these other two college players that are on here. She was also just named captain this spring season. So going into her junior year, she will be captain of the team. And I believe that is very deserving. She's one of the best athletes and people that I have had the opportunity to coach. So Em, why don't you give a little background about yourself and introduce yourself?
All right, thanks, Coach Jess. So as she said, my name is Emily Wallach. I grew up in Greece and attended Aquinas for high school. I played with Empire for roughly 6 years, entering my junior year, like Coach Jess said, and I'm studying exercise science with a pre-physical therapy focus.
Cool, thanks, Em.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Jess, and thanks, Emily. Jack?
So I will do Anthony DeFeo here. Anthony, actually, Coach Oliver and myself had the pleasure of coaching as a club player at U16 and U17 from the Hilton area. He was an AGR selection in high school, and then he was a 4-year starter at RIT, 2-time Liberty League all-conference selection, and a captain at RIT. So, Anthony, you want to share a little bit about your academic background, because that's certainly out of my realm of expertise.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that. So Anthony DeFeo, like Jack said, I played for both him and Jeff, which was pretty interesting. Played for Empire at from U16 to U19. But from an academic standpoint, I graduated Hilton High School in 2015, and then went on to RIT, where I played 4 years and studied in a program called Diagnostic Medical Sonography, which is just a fancy term for ultrasound technology, where I'm now currently working full-time in Syracuse, Fayetteville area at St. Joe's Hospital. So that's just a little background on that.
Awesome.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks, Anthony. And I think that's it for me. So all of our new panelists are introduced. So staff, I'll let you take it away and get it evening.
You can get back to painting. We'll see you later.
And we'll get back to painting. It'll be green by the time I turn my screen back on.
Cool. All right. So we will jump into questions you guys submitted, and we had some awesome questions here. So thank you to everybody that submitted them. I think we had close to 18 or 20 in total. Some will be a little bit longer, and some will be a little bit more kind of succinct in the answers, and some are directly towards the coaches and some directly towards the players. So first one here, can you study abroad and play soccer during the same year? Coaches, anybody want to take that?
I can take that, Jack. It's something, since I have gotten to Geneseo, that is a big part of the Geneseo soccer experience. So in my 2 years, we've had 7 guys go in the spring season. We had 4 guys go to Italy a year ago, and then we had 3 guys go to Spain this year, and obviously got cut short due to all of this. But, it's something that as in their spring semester of their freshman year, we start having them go to seminars and start learning about where they would like to go, and then to obviously have their academic interests there as well. So it's definitely something that's doable. The spring semester is perfect for it. A lot of these countries that the guys go to have a ton of soccer anyway, so it's not like they're missing out on too much, especially at Division III level, where we're limited in our practices anyway. So it's something that I would highly recommend. I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience to go away for the semester and travel and study somewhere different. So it's a great question.
Emily, can you speak to that for Division I? Are you able to travel abroad at the Division I level and still play?
Yeah, so my previous coach that I had, Krista McKendry, she allowed us to study abroad our junior year in the spring. However, she felt as if it kind of was an obstacle for the team having a lot of the players gone during the spring season during their junior year. So she changed it now, and we are allowed to still study abroad, but it'll be our senior year during the spring. So basically when we're done with our fall season.
All in all, I think it's a really fair question. You can ask any coach in the recruiting process. I think more and more programs, or more and more colleges and universities offer study abroad programs, but you'll definitely want to ask, each coach on how it fits and aligns within their soccer kind of philosophy. All right, next one. This one's directed towards our alums here, our former players. What time commitment comes with the different divisions in season and out of season? So let's, Marla, you want to speak first on just the balancing soccer and athletics in season and out of season?
Sure. Yeah, so it is a little bit different in season and out of season, and I don't really know if there's more time spent in the fall or more time spent in the spring, to be honest, because there's definitely, we have practice every day. We're thinking about soccer a lot, watching film, traveling for games. So in the fall, there's a lot of focus on the game and how you can prep yourself and how to prioritize your schoolwork when you're not at soccer, so you can focus solely on soccer at practice and at games. In the spring, it's a little bit different because we're focusing on building strength and building techniques and different training things to prepare for the fall. So we do have practice still, but it's less frequent, and we only have 5 weeks of it because of NCAA rules. But we're lifting together, the team is together, so we still spend quite a bit of time together. But it is a little bit different in terms of intensity and just the focus between fall and spring.
Anthony, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is pretty similar to Marla, just in the sense of we are spending a lot of time, but I think it's also based on your program too. Like you have to take into consideration how much time each program requires for work. Whereas in my sense, I noticed myself doing better in the fall because a lot of my coursework was spring loaded, or would be loaded in the spring. So a lot of the major stuff that I was doing, it was like we would learn bits and pieces of it in the fall, and then it would really, really be tested in the spring. But something that I also noticed is that I felt like my time management in the fall was a lot better than the spring. And that's just because, I mean, you also have to think of away trips and everything that goes into that. So I would take advantage of all that time. Basically, you have teammates up to almost probably 30 to 32 guys and girls that are in different majors. So it's almost like you have, if you're struggling with something, you can go and ask them. So for me, I think I did better when there were like in the fall because I had a full team around me of different majors too. So it would really help me if I had a question about something. I'd be like, all right, who knows how to do this or something like that. So they could at least explain it to me. So I felt like you can use your team in the fall, and in the spring it is a little more difficult to use your team and you do have more time. So it's a lot easier to get sidetracked in like social activities and everything else like that. So I just think it comes down to time management. And once you figure out a set schedule in the fall, you can kind of use that set schedule to keep to the spring, if that makes sense, as long as you're staying on track.
Well said, Anthony. And Emily, anything you want to speak to, any different demands that you've experienced at a Division I school for balancing school and soccer?
Well, basically, like Anthony said, in the fall, definitely having your teammates around is a big help. A lot of girls on my team also are majoring in the same thing as me. So especially as a freshman, I mean, just coming in and I really didn't know what I was doing, but I had my teammates to rely on and they really helped me out. But in the spring, it's a little bit different for me. I don't really have as much time off. The spring is kind of like not even really an off season. It's more of basically fall all over again, except we have less games and we're just training 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and it differs with every school, I'm sure, but that's just my experience. We're just constantly doing stuff. Practice, usually we practice Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 a.m. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have weight training. And after that, after like 5 p.m., usually I have time to get all my schoolwork done and go to the library and stuff. And then again, like Anthony said, the teammates are definitely a big help.
Great. Another one here for our alums, and this is from Alec Patachi. In the perspective of student athlete, how can you make it easier to manage your priorities? And Alec, is Alec on this Zoom, by the way? Alec, you want to chime in real quickly? I got a question for you. No, he's on mute. Okay. Yeah, managing your priorities. I'm going to guess he's meaning your priorities like balancing school and soccer. So how were you able to manage your priorities in school and soccer as a student athlete? And we'll go in reverse order here. Emily, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So a big thing for me that I learned was I needed to work on my time management skills. Basically, during season, you have very limited time to get your schoolwork done. So when you do have free time, I mean, I usually just try to get as much done as I possibly can. Even if I don't have assignments due for weeks, as long as I have free time, I just try to get as much done as possible. One thing I felt that really helped me was staying organized. I really focus on like planning stuff. So I bought a planner and I write down all of my days and what I have to do each day, and just so I know what I have to get done and I can work around practice and stuff like that.
Awesome. Marla, Anthony, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so for me, prioritizing meant getting everything done early, if that makes sense. I do not trust the bus Wi-Fi, and I think a lot of you will understand that when you're on the bus. They tell you that the password is the password, but the Wi-Fi never works. So if you're relying on that, I would say you're failing in time management. Get your stuff done either the night before or try and get it done before you get on that bus. Because once you get on that bus, like, you can use stuff to study while you're on the bus. That works if you have it on paper, or like you can print it out. But for me, it was always making sure that before the away trip or whatever it was that I had going on, if it was a big game and I didn't want my mind to be focused on my work, I would like to get it done either right after I got out of class or like right after practice. And I would just spend a lot of my time on nights where you have some free time. So like, I don't know, if you got out of practice at 5 and you don't really have much going on the next day, and you know you have something big coming up within the next couple days, that's when I would really get most of my work done, and I would get ahead if I could. So it's just looking at those opportunities that you have to like take advantage of the extra time that you have. And if you can always stay one step ahead, then you're kind of doing it right, if that makes sense. And that's what worked for me, at least.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what both Anthony and Emily said. Getting ahead is really critical, and then also just knowing what you have to get done and planning. So I also had a planner, would write down all my assignments and then do them as early as I could. And another thing that really helped me was going through all of the syllabi that the professors handed out right away and figuring out what were the things that had counted for the most points, what was most heavily weighted, because sometimes no matter how well you manage your time, you run into a situation where you really need to focus on like a big tournament, or you're in NCAAs and you want to win the games. So you have to know what you can sacrifice. Sometimes I wouldn't do as well on like a homework that's only worth 2% of my grade so that I could study later for an exam that's worth 25. So really just knowing what everything counts for and then getting ahead as much as you can was really helpful for me.
Awesome. Time management, time management, time management. Ultra key. Quick one here. This is for our coaches. Do college coaches come to high school games? Anybody want to take that one?
I can speak from not having an assistant at a smaller school. I would say very rarely. You know, if you're certainly a top recruit, for sure, we'll do what we can, but especially being way out at like a Keuka College to get back to a Rochester or to get to Syracuse in time for a high school game just doesn't work out. So unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of an assistant. So from a head coach standpoint, without having an assistant, I would say I get the most bang for the buck at a college showcase.
I'll add, I mean, you can really ask those questions directly to any coach, and they'll let you know if they can make it or not. The thing to keep in mind is, while we want to get to as many high school games as possible, we're also in our own season with our college team. So it's hard to be, sometimes in two places at the same time. Next question. This is from Bridget McMaster. If you're not a sophomore yet, is it okay for you to contact a coach even if they can't contact you? And could the coach respond if you're the one to contact them first? Liz or Jess, you want to take this one?
I can start, but I think it just depends on the level, Bridget. I think Division III, they can contact you back at any point. So Division III can answer you. I think Division I differs, and Division II, I think even if you do, I don't know, can they contact you back if you're the first one? I think if you call them, they can answer the call. I'm not sure if it's the same for an email.
Yeah, typically for email, they can only respond kind of generally about the program. They can't directly talk about recruiting until you meet that age threshold.
Yeah, so I think Division III can answer at any time, so you're not too early. Division I, there are stricter regulations. You can call, and they can answer your call, but I think email, they might be a little more restricted.
And I don't think it hurts you can still email the coaches, you can fill out their recruit questionnaires, you can get in their recruiting database, like you can start to get information on when their camps are. So even if they can't directly talk to you about recruiting, being proactive and getting, in their system is only going to help in the process.
And I think for Division I too, and I think Em can speak to this, for Division I, did you go and actively recruit or reach out to coaches for Division I, Em, or were they reaching out to you?
It was a little bit of both. If I remember correctly, I don't think I could reach out to them until my junior year of high school. I don't know if that's changed now. But when I tried to reach out before junior year, I would just get like a general email back that would basically just tell me when the ID camps are, and it wasn't any like personal information like that.
All right, another one here. This is for our alums, our former players. How long did it take for you to decide on a school? Anthony, you kick us off this time.
My story is a little interesting. I don't think I was really that good until until I actually joined Empire. Maybe that's what helped. Because I played for Cobras, which was just like a travel soccer league until I was 15 years old. Joined Empire U16, and I wasn't even considering college soccer until my senior year in high school, when kind of everything just started making sense. So I was a little late to the process, if that makes sense. And I was really, really focused on my academics. So I kind of wanted something for me that fit all of that. So when I looked at schools, I looked first from an academic standpoint, and then if I could play soccer, that's kind of where I wanted to go. And I knew that for me, RIT, I think I committed probably in March of my senior year. And that was just because a lot of things come into making that decision, like financial situation, academic program, and then also if everything is going to work out in the sense of, does all of that make sense and is all of that doable? So for me, I kind of committed late. I think for most people, they're usually probably at the start of the year. I don't know how that is, but you probably know right around then. Mine was definitely late.
Marla, Emily, anything you'd like to add?
My story is kind of similar to Anthony's. I didn't start playing Empire until I was 16, and I played for Penfield Strikers up to that time. And I joined Empire because I knew I wanted to play in college, and I figured that was the best way for me to be seen and to grow before I started. So it took me a really long time to make a decision. I think before going to MCC, I didn't decide until like June. I was just really torn, and at first I knew I really wanted to play, and I knew I wanted to do engineering. And then when I started calculating loans for all the schools that I was thinking about going to, I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. And then I calculated MCC and thought about the scholarships I could get there, and just decided personally, for me, the loans for the 2 years wasn't worth it, and I wanted to save that money so that I would have less to pay off later. So I chose MCC in like June, and then went there for 2 years and went through the whole college search again. And again, I think I decided maybe mid-May for RIT. And there's just, like Anthony was saying, so many things to weigh when you're deciding where to go. But I think you can make the best of whatever decision you make. So anywhere you go, just do your best.
Emily, anything else we didn't touch on that you'd like to add?
I think they touched on pretty much everything. Just for me, I started playing Empire when I was 11 or 12. So I kind of always knew that college soccer was something that I wanted to do. So I kind of started the recruiting process a little earlier than Anthony and Marla. After I visited a bunch of schools and was in contact with a lot of colleges, it took me probably when I finally found Evansville, it took me less than a week to decide that I wanted to go there. It felt like home to me. I was very comfortable when I visited. I loved the coaching staff. The players were very welcoming, and it just felt like the right place for me. I also got, fortunately, a scholarship offer that I just couldn't pass up, so that was also a big thing for me.
Next one here. This should be a pretty quick one. Michaela Campbell asks, how long is too long for a highlight video? Anybody want to do that? Liz?
Yep, I'll do that. I would say 5 minutes or less is a good highlight video. I think by 3 and 4, I'm like, yep, I've seen it, like I have a good picture, and I have a pretty good idea of what direction we can go in next, whether that's I've seen it and I'm really excited to see you play, and I'd like to see more. I'd like to see you at a showcase. I'd like to see in this current situation, you know, maybe it's something where we would take a step to, you know, have a phone call and just like make progress with the recruiting plan. So yeah, coaches agree, less than 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
Better off going concise, shorter, 2, 3, 4 minutes, and just having it be great clips and keeping it short. We got one here from Drew Cull. When do official visits normally take place? And explain the difference between unofficial visits. Coach Howlett, you want to do that one?
Yeah. So the official visit is obviously covering the expenses that you would have to put out there in going to visit the schools. I'm not sure the Division I timeline with that, when you're allowed to do official visits there. So that's something maybe need to look up. We may have, Jack, you may have had it in the resources.
Yeah, it was in one of the earlier ones. I know for D3, it's January 1 of your junior year. D1 is earlier. Maybe at the start of your junior year, you can do official visits, but refer back to our PowerPoint in there.
Yeah, and then, so the only thing that really differs with your unofficial is that you're responsible for all of the payments and fees. So, I mean, again, I try and do as many unofficial visits as possible in the area. There's so many great schools in the area that even just finding your feet, even if you're not interested in it right away, I would still go through the process to see what it looks like and how people set it up. So, you know, we're fortunate to have so many schools here that we can do that in this area. And then obviously, you know, hopefully the schools put it out there for wanting you to come on an official visit. But if they don't, I mean, it's always a question that you'd be able to ask when they bring up the visiting.
And some things they typically are paid for, like on an official visit, would be meals. They would the program would cover the meals for the recruit and could recover the meals for parents in the dining hall. Typically, the recruit stays overnight in the dorms with the host on the team. The program could also pay for a hotel for the parents, depending on travel, and also largely depending on recruiting budget and what the coach would offer to help with. And could offer like flights as well, but those are very kind of specific to how much the recruiting budget is for every program. Next one, we'll go back. We'll start with our players here, our alums here. See if any of you have experience with this. What if your family doesn't like the school you like? Did anybody have any experience with that?
This was the hard question I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I can start if that's okay with everyone. Okay. I think this is a big decision, and it kind of is obviously based on whether or not your family agrees with the school of choice. But for something with me, actually, it's kind of interesting is that my father was very against RIT. And that was just mainly from a financial standpoint. He just thought it was ridiculous to spend that much money on education. So one of the things I considered was a 2+2, kind of like what Marla did. And what ended up making that decision was that I took responsibility for everything, kind of saying, like, this is where I want to go. This is the why I want to go. And this is why I think it's the best option for me. And it was basically program specific. Like, there are some things that if you're going to school for that, I think like you could go to a community college and save some money and then, you know, go to a private institution after that. But for me, my program was so specific that I kind of made it clear to my family that like there are not too many schools in the country that offer this program. So it would be really difficult for me if I was to save some money and do a 2+2 to get into like an institution like RIT or somewhere else. So that was one of the things that I had to talk. I just think like sitting down with your parents and making sure that they understand why it is that you want to go there and why they are so against it. Like, you have to establish that first and foremost, because if you don't, then there's just kind of that like space of like, well, I'm super set on you not going and I'm super set on going. So I think just having a conversation with them and trying to find like a fine line of why you want to go there so bad and why they are so against it, and answering that question first will really help with everything.
Marla, Emily, anything you'd like to add? And if there's not, that's fine too.
No, I mean, I never had any experience with that. My parents were pretty supportive. I think they like trusted all my decisions that I was wanting to make because I had good reason behind them. So they were very supportive throughout my recruiting process, definitely.
Yeah, my experience was very similar to Emily's. My parents were there to help guide me, and they were just really supportive of whatever I decided.
Emily, were your parents on board with you going that far from home?
Well, yeah, I don't think they were too happy about it, but it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, when I first started the recruiting process, I was really set on wanting to stay close to home. I'm kind of a homebody. I like to be home. And I honestly didn't think I was going to be able to handle being 12 hours away from home, but it's worked out totally fine. They come visit me sometimes, so I think they've gotten used to it now.
Believe me, I tried to get her back to Keuka. At least I'd send her a text once every week for that first year she was there.
Oh, yeah. You still do.
Great question and great answers. Thank you. I got another one for our former players. How do you or did you spend your time when you're not in class or at practice?
Honestly, probably sleeping for me. I just felt like I was constantly going at it. So a lot of free time that I had, if I wasn't doing homework, if I didn't have any academic schoolwork to do, I was probably sleeping.
Marla?
I had joined some clubs on campus, so I was involved in a lot of the engineering groups. And so I was going to meetings or planning meetings and doing things like that. And then I also worked on campus, which was a really good experience for me. But sleep also, that was the first priority, and then all those other things after.
For me, I'm a pretty social person, so I really like to be around people. And so if my work was done, it was probably hanging out with some of my teammates, or even just hanging out with some of the people in my major, just trying to, I kind of like to recharge like that. So it's good for me. It works just to be around them. And once my work was done, just kind of socialize.
Great. Let's see. Next one here. How do you get an invite for an official visit if there aren't any ID camps or college showcases going on? Any coaches want to tackle that one?
I can do that one. So I think the way that we kind of schedule our visits is that we typically would have an unofficial visit before an official visit. And so if you haven't had any communication yet and a coach hasn't seen you, that would probably be the first thing to happen, would be to have an unofficial visit. And those can really, that's just about communicating with the coach. And sometimes that can happen even if the coach hasn't seen you. You can still go and meet with the coach on campus, and you can still go through the process of learning about the program. It could just be a little bit out of order. A visit might happen, and then they see you play because you really hit it off. It seems like you really share a lot of the same values, and it seems like you really clicked with the coach and you really clicked with the team. And now you might be higher on that coach's list to be one of the players that you come out and they watch at a high school game, or that they watch at a showcase, or that they keep a really close eye on at an ID clinic. So just taking some initiative with an unofficial visit sometimes is the best way to go. And, even if the coach might not be saying, hey, come to campus, to say, you know what, I still just really want to go visit the campus, and I'm going to give the coach a heads up a few weeks in advance to say, I will be there and I'd love a little bit of time to meet with you. And sometimes that'll work and sometimes it might not. And hopefully it does, and you can get a feel for it. But I would start with just kind of taking an initiative on your own to go and visit the campus and reaching out to the coach and just asking for some time.
And I think like right now that you can't, obviously there's no showcases going on and what have you to set those visits up. I think it's just staying in constant communication with that coach. And once we have the answers to give you guys, you will be the first to know. So I think communication right now is just the best route that you can take. And then once students are allowed back on campus and things start to get back up and running, that way the coach can then communicate back with you to set those visits up.
All right, next one I've got here. Is it wrong to communicate with a coach as a normal conversation, or okay for this sometimes not as formal? So I'll take this one, and I think it's good to start formal in your initial email. Absolutely start formal. It shows maturity and you know, that you're really thoughtful in the process. And then as you get to know a coach, you can be more personable. You know, if you start texting with a coach or you get on the phone with them, and just like with any relationship in life, as you get to know them a little bit better, you certainly do not need to be as formal. But you'll kind of get the feel of that as you get to know the coach and so forth. And as they, you know, are less formal with you and kind of get to know you in the process. Coach, is anything else you'd add?
I have a funny story about this. Actually, a former player who came on her first visit, and she was very comfortable talking and being open, and it was great because I got a really good idea about who she was. And she just, one of the first things I remember her saying to me was just like, "Oh, I hate running," and it just stuck out to me. And she ended up coming to RIT and having an amazing career. And it's just still something I give her a hard time about. So. Anthony, it's Mo, if you can imagine that.
Oh my God, how?
A hard time. I know she happens to be quite the runner, but it was just kind of, you know, I think there is definitely a line that you wanna make sure you stay on the other side of. And fortunately, it worked out for her, you know. And there might be other coaches who might be like, "I don't, you know, this might not be a good place for you." But yeah, that's always a story I will remind her of forever and ever.
Next one here. What are some tips on making yourself stand out as a player? Coach Christensen, you want to take that? Tips for standing out as a player?
I mean, I can try. I think it varies from coach to coach, to be fair. For me, we're a small school. I know Liz and Jack and certainly other coaches can speak differently, but for me, it's not even looking positionally so much. It's those that have the characteristics of being able to play anywhere. I don't have the luxury of recruiting a huge net. So for me, it's that personal connection. Once I identify the player, trying to get to know them and sell them on that. I don't know what selling, but getting to know on a personal levels. But on a playing field, for me, it's, you know, what does the first touch do? What are they doing off the ball? You know, that for me, that's one of the most important things. And then, you know, what are they doing when nobody's looking? You know, the simple things. Like, I don't want to deal with players that are constantly back talking the referee or constantly are saying stuff underneath their breath or are back talking a coach on the sideline. I want players that are, you know, under control, are aware of themselves, obviously have great vision on the field, a great first touch, and are active off the ball. So for me, when I go to these college showcases and maybe the few high school games I can get to, those are the characteristics I'm looking for, because I do not have the luxury of saying, hey, I want to go find a right back and I'm gonna look at all these right backs. I have to say, hey, this might be a midfielder or a forward who I can say, hey, I could see you back there because you have these characteristics. So for me, that's kind of what stands out for a player.
And I'll add one thing that I like to look at, and I don't know if it came from my dad growing up, but he said, and I now look for this in players, is what do they do? How do they respond when they make a mistake? So are they going to pick their head up and try again? Are they going to be encouraging to their teammates, or are they going to give up? So I really look at that, because obviously when you're out at a showcase, you want to be perfect on the field, but you're not going to be. And we as coaches realize that. So it's how you respond to that mistake and how you respond to a bad touch, how you respond to doing something that you didn't mean to do, because obviously you're going to do it. You're not going to be perfect when you're being watched. So that's a big thing for me as well.
Yeah, and I think I would rather watch a player make 10 mistakes and make 10 quality plays than and be an impact on the game, even though they're making mistakes, than have somebody who isn't finding the game because they're afraid to make mistakes.
Awesome. Next one here, going back to our alums. What was a stereotype or certain thing that you found to be untrue as you got into the college search process?
Sheesh.
Can we put you on the spot with that one?
Well, I have one that I had to overcome, which was that community college was for people who didn't try in high school and that they didn't have good sports. And I, like, all through high school tried really hard because I was like, I'm not going to community college. I studied for the SATs. Community college coaches reached out to me and I emailed them back and said, I'm not planning to go to community college, but thanks for reaching out. And then I went to community college. So I really learned that you can get a lot out of your education there if you really apply yourself and you get to know your professors. And one of the great things about community college for me was the diversity and the student body, and also that professors aren't doing research at community college because there's no tenure. So they are so focused on students only, and that was amazing for a foundation for engineering.
Thanks, Marla. Emily, Anthony, anything else you want to add? If not, I got another one for you guys.
I don't know. They always say that the freshman 15. I don't know if that correlates to this group, but that didn't happen to me. And I think if you're an athlete, I don't think that's going to happen to you. But definitely stay away from dining hall food if you can. That is a stereotype that's true. I don't know, Marla, Gracie's, are you a fan? Because I was not. And so just try to watch where you're eating, I guess, because especially with season, you want to try and eat healthy so your body can recover.
It's a good one, Ant. Thank you. Another one for our players. And a really good one here is from Sydney Malka. What do you wish you would have done different at our age, so the current players' age, 15, 16, 17, to help them in the recruiting process? Is there anything you, looking back, you would do differently?
I personally wish that I would have reached out to more schools sooner and visited more schools. And a couple schools that were interested in me, I actually kind of shut them down before I really did research on them. So one thing that I would definitely recommend is keeping all of your options open. Never say no to a school, even if you really don't think you're interested. You never know what's going to happen. So
a good one.
I agree with that. I would not say no to coaches before doing research and just kind of knowing what their programs are like. Yeah. And also just not being afraid to make mistakes when you're in club soccer and working on the things that you're really weak on. Like, if you know what your weaknesses are when you're younger, like, try and work on them before you get to college. And you can still do that and improve while in college too, but it's really helpful when you come in and you can shoot with both feet, or you know how to recover well and things like that. So
I think for me, one thing I definitely would have done different is kind of what Marla was saying. Is just, I remember being so nervous for college showcases, and that was because at 16 it was my first experience with Empire, and I also had Jeff Oliver as a coach, who you don't want to let that man down. And so I just remember being so tense, and I think wishing that I would have just kind of instead of thinking about everything that I did and all the plays that I did, just kind of let myself play and just let what, the coaches tell you to kind of just let it transcend onto the field. So I think for you guys, especially in that stage, just keep that in mind that, like, it goes by very quick, everything. Like, I still feel like I could be 16 years old. And so just enjoy the moment and enjoy the fact that, like, you have coaches that trust you. And when you're out on that field, just play your game, because that's what's going to get you noticed. It's not being the tensest player and running around like crazy. So I think that's something I would have done differently if I had the chance to go back.
Well said, Anthony. That actually answers a question somebody else was asking about how to deal with nerves and stuff. So really well said to just kind of be yourself when you're out there playing at showcases. So we do have some other questions, but we're going to wrap up right now. These other questions, I'll send them to our coaches, our boys and our girls coaches here. So that way we can email, because there's still some good questions. We did hit all the questions that were specifically directed towards our student athletes. So quick round of applause. Thank you to our student athletes for coming on tonight. Appreciate it. And then the other questions that we didn't get to, the coaches, we can handle this afterwards, offline. We can shoot an email. I see a couple that are like boys questions. We can divvy those up, and a couple, Jess and Liz, it looks like there's some of your players that you can kind of answer off this, so we can wrap everybody up tonight. But before we do close, are there any questions that anybody has, that you'd like, especially our student athletes, to elaborate on, that were asked tonight before we wrap up? And you can either unmute or you can shoot it in the chat. All right. Oh, here we go. Riley Reese, did you guys think about D1, D2, community college? Student athletes, did you think about all those divisions, or did any of them, did you guys think about D1, D2, D3 a lot? Like the labels and so forth in those realms, I'm guessing.
Personally, I did in the beginning. Like, when I first started thinking about college, I was like, I'm going to play D1 or D2. And then the more I got to know programs and think about my priorities in terms of school, then it was like, okay, maybe D3 is the right one for me, because I want to be really competitive, but I also really want to do well in academics, and that's a huge focus for me too. So it's good to think about that and weigh the pros and cons, in my opinion.
I think really well said. Another one here. When did you first start receiving personal emails from college coaches? What year? If you remember, what year of high school, and fall, spring? Anthony, you said you were like senior year?
Yeah, I was fall senior year, right around the end of high school. That's when I started getting them.
Marla?
Junior and senior year.
And Emily?
Same for me, junior, senior year.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions? And I'll wrap up by saying, if there's any other questions that do come, you forget to ask and you realize in a day or two, you can email, I know myself, any of the other coaches that are on this webinar. It's really been a pleasure. And I think it's been really neat. I've been a part of this for a few years now, when we only did it as a one-night process. And I thought it was really cool to kind of break it up in different chunks over a 4-week period. So if questions arise, please do not hesitate. This is one of, I know one of my favorite parts is helping players find the best fit for them when they go off to college. Coaches, anything else you'd like to say as we wrap up?
I just want to thank Marla and Anthony and Emily for coming on and being more exciting to listen to, spice it up, but also would love some feedback too on the 4-week model. It's been fun and I've enjoyed doing it this week. So hopefully everybody had got a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening in, and hopefully you got at least a couple nuggets from it. But it was fun talking to you guys, and the feedback would be greatly appreciated so that we can always make it better in the future for you.
Yeah, and to your point, Liz and Jess, I mentioned in the email that went out with kind of the survey for questions that we will likely, some of us will get together and try and come up with some ways to create a survey to send out to everybody, make it easy for you and provide some feedback. So again, on behalf of everybody here, thank you to our 3 current and former student athletes for joining us. Always nice to have, a fresh perspective on things for those of us that think we've been doing it for so many years. We kind of go through the same thing over and over. And thank you all for your time. Over these last 4 weeks, like Jess said, hopefully it was helpful to you in some capacity. I believe the information, the kind of homepage has everyone's email address, all the coaches that are on staff, that are on the panel, as well as the last email I sent out, they were copied in. So hopefully all of you can, feel free to reach out to them or myself directly if you have any further questions.
I would just say, not to leave out Jeff, because it was kind of his idea with all this process. It was kind of the college coaches coming together. So I would say without Jeff, this wouldn't have happened. So I think a big thank you goes to Jeff.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. But it was nice to hand it off to all of you and see what a great program you put together. So thank you all for your efforts.
All right. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.